Hey, it's CrossFitTracking.com, and I'm excited to bring a full review or comparison of the Garmin and the Polar load tracking platforms and system within their app, and just looking at the two over time. So I've been running a sort of a side-by-side comparison for a while now, comparing Garmin's training load platform and training status overview. It's alongside Polar's cardio load and training load pro. So we're going to get into it. Basically, I'm going to cover a few basic things. So we're going to look at how the load respond to increased loads or frequency of workouts, how the loads respond to time off of training, how the loads respond to an intense session and how that affected the load level, how it responded to just daily and regular sessions through regular CrossFit workouts, and what the basic calorie burn estimates were for both devices. Now I'm using the Garmin Fenix 6 alongside the Polar Grit X. They should both, and pretty much completely across the board, be giving you the same stats, because if you're using a chest strap, which anybody in CrossFit should be using a chest strap, you're getting the same heart rate to both devices, and it would be the same heart rate to any and all Garmin or Polar devices, as long as you're using a Garmin device that tracks training effect, training status, training load. So I'm going to look at how one load changes versus the other, so our percentage differences over a period of time. So I charted it across a different sort of spectrum of time. So we're going to look at it just since the beginning of June, so about 3 weeks. And what I'm going to do is we're going to look at it in the app, and then we're going to look at it in sort of some calculations or just some spreadsheets. I am not a video wizard, so this is not going to be glorious and pretty. My primary point with this website and with these videos, just to get useful content out to those especially training for CrossFit, because a lot of the websites with watch development and training load have to do with specifically running or biking or triathlons. So with that, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe. I'm trying to build a subscriber base so you can stay tuned for any and all updates as they come down the pipe, and we'll get into the app now. Thanks so much. Okay, so you can see this is the main landing page for the Garmin. Again, we're going to compare the Fenix 6 versus the Polar Grit X, and I'll just sort of highlight a few minor differences, but you'll see just at the top here in the training status, that's where you're going to access the load and the load detail screens. So you'll click in there. Obviously, you can see it gives you a summary that you're in maintaining phase, and a summary of your Vo2 Max, your load level for right now, and the heat acclimation. That maybe is more pertinent to runners, but for us doing CrossFit, we're really just looking at the load. Something to say specifically before going any further: to get a Vo2 Max score, you have to go on a run at least 5 minutes in length, a couple times a week. You will not see, like right in the middle here where it says maintaining, you would not see that status update if you do not go on at least 2 runs of at least 5 minutes in length. But that's how you get your Vo2 Max score. That's how it compares your load level versus your fitness level off the Vo2 Max. So go into the middle button here into load. The 945 and the Fenix 6 series will have this load focus area. If you have a 245, this won't be there, but this can show you the different areas that are accumulating load, whether it's anaerobic, highly aerobic, or lowly aerobic. For most of us doing CrossFit, this is not really helpful because it's almost all highly aerobic or anaerobic. You go into the exercise load level, the next screen over, next tab over, and you'll see just sort of a summary of the workouts. You can see in small print in the middle, with each activity, it gives you a load contribution score, and it gives you an area of focus or an area of benefit. Again, not totally pertinent, but if you have the 245, you'll get the load scores. They just won't show you what the actual load score for that workout session was, like it lists it off here. And it's kind of nice because you can jump from here straight into your last workout and see what the contribution level was for like a training effect. Obviously, that can tell you the exertion level, and then all the detail in the zones. But the main screen you're going to go to for loads is in this 7-day load. It's unfortunate you have to click 3 times. You go into training status, you go into load, you go into the 7-day load tab to be able to access Garmin's primary load overview. And you can see it tracks across time. You can hold your finger here and you can get your load level for that day, for how it ended up that day. And you can see the green bars is the optimal training range for your fitness level. And we're going to see this. I did this on a spreadsheet alongside Polar's load chart, but you can see, you know, it just sort of, there was a period of time where I was doing regular, consistent workouts, and I'll show you a couple of larger workouts. And then I was doing, had taken some time off because I wanted to consciously see how the load would deplete and with each of the devices, and then a rebuilding phase here. If you go into Polar's, for example, you'll end up in the primary initial screen here. You'll see just the basic Polar things. And if you want a review of the Polar or the Garmin device I'm talked about, it's all on the YouTube channel. But for here, we're just looking at the bottom tab listed as training. Here you can see what it shows you as a summary of your workouts that week or the amount of training you've done that week. And right in the middle here is you have the tab cardio load, and it'll show you your load identification. Here it says maintaining, and it shows you basically a little 7-day graph in the middle here, where you can see whether you're in the green or in the gray, which is sort of detraining. So it'll give you your stats up at the top for the whole week of training. But here's the primary cardio load, and it does it in a week-by-week snapshot. One thing that's ironic about this is that Polar has a very simple calculation metric. So if you highlight one of these, let's take today, the strain score is the 7-day accumulation and the 7-day estimate of cardio load you placed on your body. And the tolerance score is the 28-day load you placed on your body. And the strain divided by the tolerance determines if you are maintaining or increasing. So if your strain score is above your tolerance, you're increasing. If your strain score is similar to your tolerance, I think plus or minus 25%, then you are in the maintaining, and if your strain score is less than your tolerance, then you're in detraining. And you can see that in different periods here. So strain was considerably low, and so you can see the gray bar in the middle here underneath each of the days. I'm sorry, I don't have like a pointer to highlight it, but the gray was when I was detraining, and you can see that there was this period of time, because it only does week at a glance, where I did not have any workouts here in the middle. And you can see how the strain score lowered, and also the tolerance score, which is the light blue line, slowly lowered over time. One of the things that's great about how Polar shows these things, so you can see it like this if you want to look at it over the course of weeks. You can see when I was overreaching in different periods. And you can see these two large workouts, and we'll look at that specifically to see how it affected load in the last part of this video. One thing that's great in the top where there's these little arrows to populate, it'll take you to this overview picture, which will show you, and I don't know if it's going to turn out very well on the video because it's going from vertical to horizontal, but you can see that it gives you a chart across time. The purple is your strain, and you can see here in the middle, the purple's building, and then the blue is your tolerance, your fitness level slowly building, and each of the red lines is individual workouts. So as my strain went up significantly, you can see some of the high red lines where there was a long or a more extensive, intense workout. The strain scores would start to peak behind it, and the tolerance score would slowly follow behind it. So you can see a period of time which I had an injury right there in the middle, and the tolerance and the strain dropped off to nothing, and the tolerance sort of slowly decreased, and then it rebuilt over a period of time of different level workouts and different increases to strain level. And then you can get a prediction of how your tolerance is going to decrease over time if you cease to work out, coupled with the strain, how quickly that's going to deplete if you cease to work out. So we'll look at some of the charts, but this has come out very clearly in this video, where you can go to see. So again, you go from the main activity tab to the training tab, and here you'll see just sort of a summary, that cardio load summary in the middle, and you click on the word maintaining, and it'll take you to a snapshot picture of how your two trends are tracking over time, and you can just highlight those. So if you have two workouts, you'll go to the second, and that'll be the registered cardio load for the day, and you'll see your strain score across time. So let's look at how they compared one against the other to be able to evaluate if there's anything we can glean from the differences between the two platforms. Thanks so much. Okay, so looking at the spreadsheet, and I apologize, I'm just going to say this from the outset, this is super ultra plain, and I'm sure there's a lot more tech savvy ways to do it, but I just loaded, you know, the load scores over time. I took the polar score, which gives you just a specific digit, and multiplied it times 1,000 so that it would have a comparable, at least visually on a spreadsheet or on a chart, comparison to the load levels for Garmin. And then I tracked the percentage change from one day to the next, as well as the workouts that may have coincided with each day that created the change in the load. Same thing with Polar. You can see the Polar scores over here. So that is basically the cardio load score. So Garmin just gives it a training load, just a flat load score. Polar gives it a cardio load. It's just a different name for the basic same type of thing. And we're going to track how these are maybe different. So how are they scoring it differently, and look at the percentage changes here. And then over on the bottom here, we'll just sort of see how the loads changed one day to the next. So this was like the change based on an increase to a workout, like how much it went up. And then this is the tracking of how they change one day to the next over time. So if you look at the first, a lot of people ask, do they effectively show the same calorie burn rate? And obviously these are both connected to a chest strap. It is ultimately crucial to use a chest strap, because the only way you can really figure out if you're getting the same, if you're getting valuable information, is that you're using accurate heart rate information, because all the load is calculated off the heart rate strain or the cardio strain. So here are calories burned. You can see in blue the Garmin, you can see in orange the Polar, and you can see little tiny blips of a difference. So they're negligible, the differences between the two across a number of workouts, whether it's super high intensity workout, which is this is just at a major burn rate, or just the everyday average WODs burn rate there. So some of these charts might not, as we get into them, might not be super helpful visually, but try to think through what's happening here. So looking at load over time, so I had a build-up phase here in the beginning. So this is just the load score. So like if you're tracking the estimate of how much load you're accumulating. So remember, on the Polar, it's taking their cardio load calculation, which is the difference of the strain, which is your 7-day divided by your tolerance, which is your 28-day averages, and then multiplying it times 1,000. But you can see that they actually very similarly track. So some of these down here where there's immediate step up, I tracked the load level in the morning versus a peak level, and once I put in a workout for that day, just so you can see kind of how the differences change over time. But here in the building phase, I had two significantly difficult workouts, like on the 3rd and on the 5th. The load didn't change that much here on the 5th, and I think that's because Murph was still calculating into the load on both devices, and more so on the Garmin, which is in blue, because this was a very hard workout, and you'll see it on the load level in a second. But specifically, you can see that it didn't have a significant effect to the overall total accumulation over a past period of time. I don't know exactly how many days Garmin is tracking for, so it did go up on the Polar because it's a 7-day calculation over a 28-day tolerance moving. I really do like with Polar's load tracking that you can see how the numbers are calculated, but either way, they're both following a similar path. So here's like, a training period with a couple of difficult workouts, and then here's a period of detraining in which I didn't do workouts for 5 days. So you can see how both very similarly decreased over time in almost a similar pattern, and we'll see like a differences chart in a second, how they decreased one day to the next, and then you can see they almost bounce up the same amount. Down here, actually Polar gave me a little bit of a credit for a walk. I just did a walk around DC for like 2 hours and 3.5 miles. Garmin says that wasn't really a workout when I actually, I tracked them both on like the walking workout mode. Polar gave me some sort of minor load credit there, but you can see it just sort of stair steps up with each day's workout, and you can see a trend line. Obviously, if you were just to track the peak, which is where my load ended for the day, it would, be increasing relatively significantly to both of them in this optimal range, just like we saw in the app, that both were sort of in the detraining mode here, and the increased training here, both on the maintaining phase here, right in that same sort of sweet spot. So if you look at the next chart, this one, I couldn't figure out a way to clearly represent or highlight it. But this is the daily load changes with the workout. So whether it, what percentage change occurred from a workout from the previous day. So you can see that they do very much track similarly, one versus the other. So you can see that after a period of time when I was decreasing and not working out at all, and then obviously the walk didn't really count, and then I went back to the first workout, there was a significant change in the amount of, the load change per day from one day to the next. I think I had gotten down to like 200 on the Garmin, so I added a workout of, almost 200, and so it jumped up almost 100% on the Garmin. But you can see, if anything, even though these numbers might not make a whole lot of sense, you can see that the percentage changes per day based on the same workout tracked by both devices is tracking relatively similarly. Obviously, it's not an exact science, but they're not tracking in the same exact metrics, but they are very similar. So you can see that here, that the percentage change per day when there is a workout or isn't a workout, you can see the same decline here. So after a few days of not working out, both devices gave the same rough percentage decline. And then it sort of leveled off, and then it, again, it showed another significant decline until I popped in a workout on the 12th, and then there was just a minor walk, and then, a more significant workout on the 14th. So you can see that they're tracking the same in how they change, whether it's a traditional period where you're just doing regular workouts. Actually, there's a couple of harder ones in here that the Garmin reflected a percentage change difference, and then Polar captured in 1 percentage change difference day. But you can see just that period versus the decline period, and then a re-spike on that one. And then going into the last chart, the load per workout. So you can see a couple differences here. I just wanted to show this because I thought it was interesting information. So the Garmin gives a score, and they don't exactly say what, but it's basically like the same thing. So a load score, like an exertion level, like an exertion impact on your body, and Polar does the same. And this is the percentage difference. So Garmin, if you look at it, just an estimate, say 151 here versus 75 here, or versus 65 here on the evaluation. So this is your cardio load score if you're tracking it on the watch or on the Polar Flow app, and this is your training load score if you're tracking on Garmin, and this is the difference between the two. On the 3rd and on the 6th, I did more extensive exertions. So you can see, like if you go back to the calorie burn, so on the 3rd and on the 6th, so on the 3rd was, a weight vest bike ride coupled with a weight vest workout on stadium stairs and push-ups and air squats. So you can see that they track a little bit differently. So Garmin was only 42% higher as far as like a relative number that it spit out than the Polar cardio load score. Same thing with Big Floyd, is sort of like a George Floyd honoring workout, but I wore a weight vest, and it was just a lot of difficulty. It was just strain. Plus it was really hot and humid out that morning when I did it. So big scores here, but here again, Polar's score was more similar. On the average workout though, it's straight, typical WOD and regular sort of training day, it's tracking somewhat similarly in the 100 to 125% range. When you have a big exertion like these, you're actually tracking in the 40 to 70% range. So you can see slight differences there. This doesn't necessarily tell us which one is better, but we can just sort of see an idea or a window into how they're tracking and how they may be different to, how it evaluates our CrossFit training, and how we can evaluate how our fitness is improving over time. So the biggest thing to see is they track very similarly in the load. So it comes down to preference. The thing I like about this, that both are tracking what I would say is accurately. They're both declining at a similar pace, and they're both increasing at similar paces, even though their metrics are not the same. That you can see that the percentage change per day based on workout levels is similar, although somewhat different at different periods, but it's similar. And then you can see the load per workout has some tracking differences when it's a more significant strain workout, But overall, they're tracking relatively similarly, so it comes down to preference for what you like. But this has just been an overview of the Garmin load evaluation process, and based on a specific workout, based on trends over time compared to the Polar, Training Load Pro. So you can see some of the differences in how they break down. Again, thanks so much. If you liked the video, please like it. Please follow along and subscribe for future videos. It's CrossFitTracking.com. Thanks.